And hello once again. I am back, just like I said I'd be, for the final episode of Mystery Unsolved before I go on a temporary hiatus or indefinite hiatus to evaluate this series and pretty much whether or not I should do it anymore. But without further ado, I didn't tell you what the last episode would be on during the Winchester Mystery House episode, but that's the thrill of it, the fun, the surprise. The last episode of Mystery Unsolved is the Viper Room. Justin, what the hell is the Viper Room? Well, for those for those of you born in the 80s and early 90s, you probably don't know. Well, I was born in the 80s, but I know what the Viper Room is. It was basically a 90s club, famous for where all the young celebrities went to hang out, if you will. And there is some tragedy, and of course, it's a mystery because is this place haunted today? So before we get into the good stuff, I'll read you the history, give you a little brief rundown, what the place is mostly known for today, and we will conclude at the end whether or not it is truly a mystery and if the place is actually haunted. So without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the Viper Room. The Viper Room is a nightclub located on Sunset Strip in West Hollywood, California, United States. It was opened in 1986 and was partly owned by actor Johnny Depp. The other part owner was Sal Genco, who starred in 21 Jump Street with Depp. The club became known for being a hangout for the young Hollywood elite and was the site where actor River Phoenix died of a drug overdose on Halloween night in 1993. In early 1995, Australian singer and actor Jason Donovan suffered a drug-induced seizure at the club and survived. In 1997, Australian rock star Michael Hutchence of the group In Excess played his last public performance in the Viper Room a week before his suicide. So as you can see, not a happy place of things happening there. The Viper Room has undergone several changes in ownership and continues to host music of multiple genres, including metal, punk rock, and alternative rock. Although I can't really see a place doing that today because there really isn't much. As far as I mean, I don't follow metal or punk rock, but it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of rock out these days. Maybe they're just holding it all in the Viper Room. Why predominantly known as a music venue. Wow, I cannot talk. Just once I wanted to do a video without stumbling over myself, but I guess that's just the way this has to go, huh? While predominantly known as a music venue, the Viper Room also hosts a lower level below the stage and audience area, which is home to a large whiskey bar. Hmm, interesting. Okay, so we don't really need to know the history from the very beginning. The location was originally a grocery store from the 20s to 40s. They converted it to a club called the Cotton Club, entirely unrelated to the Harlem original. It was replaced by the Greenwich Village Inn, the Rue Angel, and finally the Last Call, the Melody Lounge, Filthy McNasty's. Okay, back up. I'm just going to back up a little bit here. This is all the names. From 51 to 69, the location was a bar called the Melody Lounge. In 1969 or 1973, there's a huge discrepancy there. How can it either be one or the other? In 1969 or 1973, it became Filthy McNasty's. That has to be the most ridiculous name of a club I've ever heard. In the 80s, it became a jazz club called the Central. A jazz club in the 80s. Wow, I wonder why that didn't work out. Uh, the nightclub was closed to shutting down before Chuck E. Weiss, who had performed there for years, suggested to Depp that they revitalize the spot and rename it the Viper Room. Tom Waits also had a hand in redeveloping the spot. During the weekend of November 6, 2021, the Viper Room's name was changed back to Filthy McNasty, and its exterior decor was changed from black and green to yellow and red. Okay, I love that. I love that the Viper is now renamed Filthy McNasty. That is just one of the most insane names of a club I've ever heard. All right. Despite the death of Phoenix, the year the venue opened, the club became and remained a hangout for Hollywood's most popular young actors and musicians. In 1997, the Viper Room was also a place of a few early solo performances by John Frusciante at the time of his bad physical condition caused by drug abuse. In 1983, in the 1983 film Valley Girl, the building was used for scenes featuring the new wave band The Pilmsouls. In Oliver Stone's film The Doors, 1991, the building was used as filming location for scenes depicting the London Fog, which is a club in UK. Also west of Hollywood. Oh, I stand corrected. It's actually in California. See, I don't know my shit. That's why we're doing these videos. London Fog was a lesser-known nightclub halfway up the same block from the Whiskey A Go Go, where the Doors had their first regular gigs for months early in 1966. Okay, wait. If it was a club up the street, then why didn't they just film it there? I don't understand that. That's weird. It was in the. It was also featured. The club was also featured in the film Angels Full Throttle. Um, the movie Be Cool, a documentary, Ownership. It changed its name to the Poison Room in 2006. All right. The Viper Room is featured in an episode of the paranormal series Ghost Adventures as one of their location lockdowns, where they investigated the building for 2 days. In 2019, BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural filmed an episode in the club. Part of the whole reason I decided to do this episode as for the Viper Room is because I looked it up and, but not because Ghost Adventures did it. I could give two flying poops what those guys do, but because BuzzFeed Unsolved did it, that's why we're here. The Viper Room basement is the setting for the initial set of poker games Molly Bloom hosted. Okay. It's in a music video. Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. In 2019, the music video for the song "Blow" by Ed Sheeran, Chris Stapleton, and Bruno Mars was filmed at the Viper Room. That's a trio if I ever heard one. In 2021, last year. No, excuse me. We're already in that year. Wow. God, this video is already off to a great start. In 2021, as of this year, the Viper Room was a feature of season 1 episode of Vice Media's Dark Side of the 90s, entitled The Viper Room: Hollywood Sanctuary. All right. But we want the good stuff, right? Why is this a place of mystery? Well, right off the bat, I told you 3 people died here. River Phoenix died within months after the place reopened. Another guy another guy, well, just once I want to do a video without stuttering or fumbling over my words. River Phoenix died months after it reopened. Another guy almost had an overdose and died. He did have an overdose, but he didn't die. And then Michael Hunchett, it was his last performance here before he committed suicide. So maybe there's a little bit of intrigue and mystery here as to why the people back in the day felt the need to just maybe end their lives, or maybe something was telling them, this you'll enjoy this place forever. Alright, now I'm about to give you 10 wild, violent, and tragic stories from the Viper Room. Alright, River Phoenix tragically overdosed outside the Viper Room. River Phoenix's tragic death cemented the Viper Room's infamous reputation. The 23-year-old Oscar nominee was poised to have a career par with the 90s. Okay, we already know. When he collapsed outside the club on October 31st, 1993. Prior to Phoenix's passing, the troubled actor allegedly went on a days-long drug binge with John Frusciante, the notorious drug-addicted guitarist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Ah, that's the guy I mentioned earlier. I didn't know who he was. According to Bob Forrest, one of Phoenix's close friends who had happened to be at the Viper Room that night, the group would regularly smoke crack or shoot coke directly into a vein, then shoot heroin to get a grip and come down enough to be able to carry on a conversation for a few minutes before you start the cycle again. What? If that's what drug life is like, I'm gonna pass. Oh my god. But this night was different because River was unusually wasted. On the night River overdosed, he drank a speedball, a mix of heroin and cocaine dissolved into a drink, and chased it with Valium. Okay, no wonder the man died. Holy shit. His skin began to turn gray, and he allegedly told Forrest, I don't feel so good. I think I'm ODing. Phoenix collapsed outside the club in front of his brother and sister, Joaquin and Rain Phoenix. Rain sat on River's chest, trying to stop his convulsing. He later died in the hospital. Dear God. Wow. Okay. Number two, Slipknot's Corey Taylor was thrown in jail after purposely smashing a Viper Room window. When Slipknot was recording Iowa and Los Angeles, the band spent the night on the Sunset Strip where they had an unfortunate run-in with a cop. After getting booted from Rainbow Bar and Grill for throwing shot glasses at people, frontman Corey Taylor took his drunken debauchery across the street to the Viper Room. The artist was admittedly hammered when his friend dared him to kick his foot through the glass window of the famed LA club. Though he was wearing shorts, he took the dare and the window shattered. A cop was sitting at a nearby red light and witnessed the whole thing. Serves him right. Taylor had to pay $500 in damages to the Viper Room owners in order to avoid having charges pressed against him. Jason Donovan was carried out of the Viper Room in a stretcher during Kate Moss's birthday party. The Viper Room is known for the drug-fueled debauchery that ensued inside its doors during the 90s. Kate Moss's 21st birthday wasn't an exception, which could be expected from the model whose look basically inspired the term heroin chick. Ugh. In 1995, a little more than over a year after River Phoenix died from an overdose outside the club, Johnny Depp threw a birthday party for his then girlfriend, Kate Moss. I had no idea that Johnny Depp dated Kate Moss. That's interesting. On the guest list was Australian soap star turned singer Jason Donovan, who returned to his hotel room throughout the night to snort lines of cocaine and eventually collapsed with cocaine-induced seizures. He was wheeled out of the Viper Room on a stretcher. Donovan described the harrowing incident in his memoir, Between the Lines, My Story Uncut, and they pretty much they have a big quote for him. Donovan eventually turned his life around, at least partially due to the encouragement of Johnny Depp, who recommended the singer take it easy in the future. Yeah, don't OD him, I love you, prick. The Viper Room was part of an illegal $100 million high-stakes poker ring for Hollywood celebrities like Ben Affleck and Leonardo DiCaprio. Now I'm intrigued. But before I continue, there is still nobody watching. Oh, this is lovely. I'm talking to myself. I love it. In the 90s and early 2000s, the Viper Room was a harbinger of illegal activity extending from drug abuse to high-stakes gambling. In the early 2000s, the famous Los Angeles nightclub was the site of one of Hollywood's highest rolling poker games of all time, where a $50,000 buy-in was considered modest. Molly Bloom, a waitress turned poker princess, outlined the high-stakes game during an interview on 2020. According to Bloom, she regularly hosted illegal poker games featuring some of Hollywood's biggest stars, including Leonardo DiCaprio, Ben Affleck, and Tobey Maguire, who allegedly made her bark like a seal who wants a fish in order to get a tip. Tobey Maguire made her do that? Shortstop Alex Rodriguez, Matt Damon, and the Olsen twins, who brought a billionaire along with them, who brought a billionaire along with them. Throughout her years hosting the game, players had both losses and wins in six-figure range, and was pulling in a reported $4 million a year in income by 2008. When Bloom started taking a percentage from every pot, it launched her into the territory of organized crime. That's when things started spiraling out of control. Mobsters assaulted Bloom after she refused to cut them into her business, and the FBI was hot on her trail. Eventually, the FBI raided one of her games and froze all of her assets. Bloom pleaded guilty to illegal gambling and received 12 months probation. Days before he was supposed to testify against Depp, Anthony Fox, a co-owner of the club, disappeared. In 1999, part owner Johnny Depp found himself embroiled in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed by his Viper Room business partner Anthony Fox. Fox alleged that Depp conspired with four other individuals to commit fraud and divert millions away from the club. In late 2001, Fox was fully prepared to testify against the Edward Scissorhands actor. I don't know why they mentioned that. That's kind of dumb. There was only one problem. Fox went missing along with his pickup truck and a .38 caliber rifle. Fox's truck was found 19 days after his disappearance, abandoned in Santa Clara, California, on January 6, 2002. His body was never found, and his disappearance remains a mystery. Well, well, well. If I ever decide to redo Mystery Unsolved, Mr. Anthony Fox will have the privilege of being an episode. You heard it here first. People that watch this on the replay, since there's no one watching, and I'm talking to myself. The fact that Fox disappeared shortly before he was meant to testify led some people, and plenty of tabloids, to believe that Depp was somehow responsible. In 2004, Depp eventually settled the lawsuit and turned over his share of the Viper Room to Anthony Fox's daughter. After Counting Crows went big, lead singer Adam Duritz bartended at the Viper Room to keep it real. Huh, that's funny. In 1993, Counting Crows made their debut with the album August and Everything After. The album charted in the top 5 of the Billboard 200 and went on to become one of the band's best-selling albums. That didn't stop Adam Duritz, the band's lead singer, from holding down a job at the Viper Room just to keep it real. He tended the bar at the Viper Room between 1995 and 1996, even though he was already a bona fide rock star. The only people I knew in LA were the people who worked at the Viper Room, so that's where I would hang out. It was fun. John Frusciante played a disastrous, bizarre set at the Viper Room when he was strung out. That was, of course, that's the guy from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. John Frusciante isn't a stranger to the Viper Room. In 1993, on the fateful Halloween that claimed River Phoenix's life, the artist performed a disastrous set at the club. With bandmate Flea cheering him on the sidelines, Frusciante got through a single song before he threw up and threw in a towel. In January 1997, Frusciante performed at the Viper Room again. His triumphant return years after the death of his friend should have been cathartic. Red Hot Chili Peppers bandmates Anthony Kiedis, Chad Smith, and Flea were all there in support. Instead, it was yet again another disaster. At the height of his drug addiction, Frusciante could barely sing. The Guardian's Ruhan Wazir described the artist's drug-riddled body at worst points in his addiction during the late 90s. Frusciante entered rehab in 1998 and subsequently rejoined the Red Hot Chili Peppers to make their career-defining album, Californication. The Viper Room was originally a 1950s strip club owned by famed gangster Mickey Cohen. Pussycat Dolls had a residency at the Viper Room where they performed a weekly burlesque show. Okay, so I always knew that the Pussycat Dolls were, I always thought they were in Vegas. Apparently they started off in the Viper Room. That's interesting. I'm not going into ridiculous details because it's probably pointless, but you're getting the idea here. There's a lot of crazy shit that happens. Hence the reason that today we think that the Viper Room is haunted, if you will. And it's not, and remember, it's not even called the Viper Room anymore. As of this year, I believe, I think I said, yeah, 2021. I'll go back. It's back to being called Filthy McNasty, which is just awesome. The Viper Room was the subject of an extra spooky Ghost Adventures episode. They went there in 2017. When the Ghost Adventures crew investigated a less trafficked area, they captured voices on tape. They played these voices to Rita Flora, who had been running the club's ticket booth for almost a decade, and she was convinced it was River Phoenix. The voice could get confused. The ghosts that dwell inside the infamous club's doors aren't just limited to an ill-fated Oscar nominee. Fiora admitted regularly that she had regular conversations with a ghost through text messaging. That's just weird. Tommy Black, a bartender who had worked at the Viper Room for 16 years, said he felt like the bottom bar has a different aura than the top bar, a darker, more negative one. He said he felt a constant pressure on his chest when he's down there, and had seen glasses inexplicably fly off the bar with no known cause. So, as you can tell, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy things that the Viper Room was, and I think it's haunted. Not just by River Phoenix, that's probably the one person that everybody wants to see if they were to go there. And yeah, I mean, I think there's probably lobsters, you know, strippers, uh, other celebrities other than River Phoenix, like you name it. I think there's a ton of spirits at the Viper Room. And also just because of the tragedy in the 90s, probably, I think, infused what happened prior. Like, if there was any crazy stuff that happened in, like, the 50s or the 40s at the Viper Room, when it was called the Cotton Club, I think it was kind of dormant. So I think River Phoenix dying, um, Jason Donovan almost ODing but not dying, and all these performers going there on their drug-induced binges and just, I think it actually opened up other spirits from the past to haunt the Viper Room. I don't know if anyone's ever said that before, but I'm saying I'm going on record to say it right now. Uh, Before I close the video, during the weekend of November 6th, 2021, so that was literally last week, the Viper Room changed its name back to Filthy McNasty. I love that. Let's just end on that note. This has been the last episode of Mystery Unsolved. I will perhaps be back at some point, hopefully with better people, with people actually watching, and me not putting my hands up and stumbling over myself. But I do hope you enjoyed this episode of the Viper Room from Mystery Unsolved. And what do you think? Do you think the Viper Room is haunted? Do you think it's celebrities, mobsters, or do you just think it's just a club that had a lot of crazy stuff going on in the 90s that's typical of today and there's nothing to worry about? Again, I hope you enjoy this episode of Mystery Unsolved, and please, besides checking out this video, go back and check out the rest of all the videos of Mystery Unsolved, and hopefully one day we will have another conversation and I will be able to do more episodes. But until then, so long, Mystery Unsolved. I'm Justin the Infinite.